missed him. He's back. And Dracos, this is my good friend K-Drop. Thrilled to be back. Thrilled to be...
Okay, yeah. Is it my turn now?
Who's going to get it? Syncroft. Where is it going to go? The only thing that matters is the steal, but they're going to hold it. They're not going to finish the bear. They're going to look for the fight instead. It was just a giant bait. Neon instantly the backline, and there will be no survivors this time.
If they play some kind of range support here, they can punish. Oh,
yes! There it is. Draco
Oh my God!
SK cannot stand toe-to-toe. Haru absolutely obliterating SK in this exchange. Now Meteor going to leap over the wall, but now it's Mersa who has been caught out. Zlatan on the way down, leaping in is the bear, but the knockup is still going to come through. He's running, but it's inevitable. The monkey cannot be stopped.
Cool, excellent. I will play
Unspeakable violence from Rogue. No charm of possibility. Trimby with the flash. Mickey on the flank. Cyclone in on the backline. The cannon rush going out as well. Mickey's already popped. The divine intervention on Marcoon isn't going to be enough. New Duck walking away. Ben has to do the same.
Sure, by all means.
But this looks really troll to me. Maybe they managed to do it, but it just looks really troll to me. Finn manages to have a good flash. Okay, Finn good flash.
SK firing back, but yet to find a kill, a clean charm. Gilius just deleted.
Right, they could never miss that.
Right. Flash engagement from Comp. He has no flash from the earlier play. Marcoon's looking for it as well. Exhaust goes down. Trimby with a good bodyguard position here. Marcoon's going to try and get away. But Cannon Barrage is just too darn broken. Rogue with 2 kills.
leading to
Such aggression from the mad support.
Just now hovering around though.
After that early play, it actually feels like...
hello.
Kaiser flashes forward. Handshake, we come back. They know he doesn't have a flash. That's genius. Absolutely beautiful stuff from Kaiser.
There's some pressure. Oh, sneaky again.
Caps does a flash. He's going to use it. Up again, flashes forward. Portal jump away. The sleep's going to... Oh, Caps! Oh, my God!
Can they hear us now?
Yes, yes they can.
Yes, they can.
Welcome back, everyone. It is week 3, day 2 of the LEC summer season. And after the top 6 showdown yesterday, we now have 5 teams tied in first place. One of them is XL. They should be arriving at the studio right now as they are playing BDS in our opening match. So, welcome everybody to the analyst set where I am joined once again at the top of the show with Nymira and Trouble. What a fun video to recap us of what happened yesterday. It's just fun here in the LEC.
This is the most blessed timeline. We're like 2 steps away from Yu-Gi-Oh! Having like actual summoning things on the cards. Great stuff.
Yeah, great stuff indeed. Now, yesterday's results can be summarized as the more things change, the more they stay the same, especially at the top of the table and also in our results. XL and Astralis lost to the established Rogue and Fnatic. I want to start by talking about Rogue versus XL, which was a necessary win would have been for both, right? But Rogue was pretty convincing in setting aside XL.
And I think it was so important the way Rogue took this game. It brought me back to all the way in spring when they first brought Malrang in the league and it was getting all these aggressive picks with the first strike. Now, it is an aggressive pick, it is his Jarvan, but it was with Conqueror this time, but he made it work in the early game. His job was to snowball the lanes, get that bot lane with the Kalista ahead, and he did just that. And I feel like in this particular game, Malrang was really feeling it because he was diving in past towers to try and even get kills himself. I think that Rogue early game shows to be back.
And, you know, XL, while they would very much like to be playing from ahead, it has been a good learning process from them to see, actually, against top teams, if you have these wobbles, they're going to get punished. You've got to hold on to get those victories. They did a good job of showcasing that, even though they probably didn't want to be in that situation in the first place.
Yeah, obviously. So for Rogue, maybe the start of their season wasn't as perfect as they would have wanted, but now, 4 wins in a row, they are getting going. When we look at Fnatic versus Astralis, it was all about Wonders Gragas. It was very, very clean. We also saw the first Bel'Veth for Xerxes, or the second maybe of the day. No, it was the first of the day, but we saw 2. 1 loss, 1 win.
Yeah, but I'd really love to go focus in on that Gragas. That was an 848 damage per minute game, second highest from a top laner of this split so far. Crazy performance
Nice
by Wonder.
Gragas buffs, by the way.
Yeah, great. But also nice Gragas play. Wonder getting so much CDR, going for Night Harvester, going for Seraphs, was at a point where they were getting so much cooldown reduction, so much damage that they were such a nuisance anywhere on the map. That passive pressure was very hard to deal with.
And flip the coin. We're going over towards Belveth, where it was the second one of the day that we saw Haru playing it into a very good extent. And then when Cersei brought it into Astralis, I don't necessarily think it had anything to do with the build that he brought in, because he chose Frostfire over that Kraken that we saw on Haru, but it was more about the stylistic of this champion in Astralis. I feel like Cersei is such a moving gear for the team. They really rely on him to build the early game for them. He had really high kill participation on all of their victories, and so that when he defaults back into a more selfish, what we call it, champion in the jungle where he needs to farm to get into that late game, it felt like the team was not really much functioning about that.
Yeah, and we had a bit of a chat with Elgoya yesterday about a load of champions being available in that jungle role, but if your team needs something from you, you kind of have to cut that down to something that works for your style. If you're playing selfishly and you need your lanes to support you, that's not typically what we've seen Astralis do well so far. Maybe they need to go back to something a bit more playing through lanes.
Yeah, maybe an experiment that they did, and it's maybe not going to pick the Belveth again for Cersei. But with these results, we also have an incredible 5-way tie on the top of the standings. And the LEC feels a little bit like a free-for-all at this point, all at 4-2. So we would like to invite you fans at home to let us know which of these 5 teams do you think is the best at the moment. You can vote now on discord.lec.gg. And until we get your results, let's talk about some of these teams. Let's kick us off with the current champions of Europe, G2, with some up and down moves so far.
So I think that G2, for me, they're the strongest team in the league right now, because on a good day, I think they can match the strengths of pretty much any other team in the top 5 as well. They're incredibly versatile. They have the early game to match someone like an XL. They can play through any lane, and I think that gives them this real versatility, even in draft, through playstyle. They're so hard to match for anyone prepping against them.
And I think the key factor here is, on a good day, G2, not only can they actually go up against all of these teams, but they also saw it in playoffs. They had plenty good days in spring, and they absolutely snowballed. And one of the huge factors for this was also Cap showing up, and he is showing up right now as well. I feel in particular, his game on the area, he took complete charge, and Cadril mentioned it on the desk as well yesterday. It's not necessarily about micromanaging the map or macro for Caps. It's about taking pressure off of his teammates by taking down one of his opponents, and even drawing pressure of 2 or 3 more members on the side.
Yeah, and that is a Nymera-approved Ahri for him. He's a Magi's enjoyer, very much so. But he does this on so many different champions. Again, not just the team being versatile, every single player giving that too. And Caps is probably one of the strongest carries, if not in the history of the league now.
And I like that we highlight that. We have to highlight that it's been so strong for G2, even throughout all of the playoffs in spring. But of course, I gotta say, they also have 2 losses, just like the other teams in the top 5, namely versus the Mad Lions yesterday. So what was it about what the Mad Lions did and what was lacking for G2, and thus they have to work on?
I feel sometimes their aggression in the early game is not calculated. We saw Jankos, he was joking obviously about it. It happened last week where he just invaded the blue buff all on his own, no priority on the side lanes, dies in the jungle, and he's like, well, maybe if my team had followed up with me, we would have won. But I feel like, oh, thank you very much again, Smurfing from the production right there. That's the exact invade that I'm talking about. No one is with him. He invades alone and ends up dying. But I feel like a little bit more coordination in the early game to get that aggression rolling. You need a priority from mid lane. You need Caps to be bleeding pressure into the jungle, or at least you need your bot lane to follow up with you. And when you're getting surrounded like this, you lose that early game tempo.
I personally can't put it to my heart to really criticize Jankos for playing like this, though, because that kind of aggression, that real ballsy, bold nature, is what allowed them to get leads over teams like T1 at MSI. I think that is still a strength for them. It's just that consistency, playing a fine line.
Yeah, it seems like you both agree being that it's not Jankos' fault, right? It's just how, if the machine isn't working perfectly...
It's a feature, not a bug.
It's a feature, not a bug, exactly. So you see why it would be good, but then everything has to work as well. And it's week 3. It's normal that everything is not working perfectly yet. Let's talk about XL as well. A bit of a dark horse. You'd say, well, they did make it to playoffs, but the way they have stepped into this summer season for me is beyond any expectation that I had for them.
And I think the most impressive thing for me is, well, we did a big breakdown of this yesterday, but it feels like when XL want to make a play on a certain part of the map, every lane is part of it. Even if it is just, I'm slow pushing on the other side of the map, that requires a response from the other team. They're all moving in coordination. Everyone knows their piece of the bigger puzzle. And that kind of understanding, being on the same page, is very difficult to do. I seriously applaud them for that.
And I feel like when they're not on the same page in the early game is what hurts them. And it all begins...
Yeah, true.
I know. It all begins with Marcoon, because I feel like he is the moving gear for the team, especially when he's on picks like the Volibear, like the Wukong, where you can make plays early. We've seen their bot lane as well, wants to play aggressive. Marcoon facilitates for that, dives the bot lane, gets them ahead, and the whole rest of the map is moving, as you mentioned as well. But I feel like, do you shut him down in the early? Excel seems to be suffering a little bit.
A little bit, but maybe no time to push the panic button yet. As said yesterday, it was Rogue, right? And when it comes to their growth, I think you can give them kind of that, I wouldn't say excuse, but that chance to work off the things that they've learned out of that game.
I think it does show, again, the level of how close these teams are at the top. You can't really afford to give these easy openings, even if you have been dominant for the first couple of weeks. A team like Rogue, even though they hadn't had the hottest start to this split, are definitely in a position to punish you.
And it's interesting to see because none of these teams are perfect now, right? And they are at the top of the table, but they do want to stay there. I'd love to talk about the Mad Lions as well. I'm quite excited about what I've seen from them so far, how they are working with Niski and how it is enabling the rest of the players to seemingly be more comfortable, namely yesterday Unforgiven versus G2, who had a stellar performance.
Absolutely, and this is bringing glimpses back from 2021, mad dominance all across the year. I feel like Niski coming in, taking the weight off of Elyoya. Elyoya is back in his 1v9 status from back in 2021, right? And Niski seems to be facilitating for these newer rookies coming in, like Unforgiven, guiding him around in the teamfights, making sure that everyone has their eyes where they should at any point in game. It's just so important for them. And you saw it in the comms yesterday on the video. It really did work.
And the real key phrase I want to pick out from what you just said, I completely agree with, it's taking the weight off Elyoya. Because if you have someone like Niski and Unforgiven now stepping up, it means that previously the uncontested best jungle support in the league can start to show that that class again, that form. I think that Elyoya and Kaiser are looking really, really hot. I think they could be the best jungle support in the league again, and that could give them this real inside angle to get to the top.
Oh, love that. And indeed, when that was working well, it gave them to the championship. So
it's pretty good.
Yeah, it is pretty good. Let's bring up the standings again and also bring up what the people have said. I'd love to see how it breaks down because notably, Naimira, we've not mentioned Fnatic and we've not mentioned Rogue.
No, and this is difficult because, again, they were two of our real strong teams in spring. I feel like with Fnatic, you know, in spring, their identity was smash through bot. No one can win when they win that bot lane. They haven't had quite as easy path to discovering their identity. I think both of these teams actually have been going through a rediscovery. They've been going through that rediscovery again of trying to figure out the best play to play that game. Too early to call anything on them right now, but they're still reforging.
And I feel for Rogue, unfortunately, it's been the bane of their existence.
Yeah.
That even if they're on top of the board, even if they're completely undefeated, no one necessarily believes in the Rogue train. But for Fnatic, when they came in, especially in spring, and they brought all this creativity with them and they were smashing the way towards playoffs, everyone was like all about Fnatic. Now it's all about the new teams rising.
So why specifically were they not mentioned? What is lacking so much in Rogue and Fnatic comparatively to the ones we have?
I just feel like Fnatic have not necessarily found their style yet. We have a very distinctive bot lane meta for Fnatic, where they were like, we smack through bot lane and we snowball through Upset and Hylissang. But right now, it just doesn't seem to be the case this split.
I think whereas with Rogue, you know, I think they weren't always the most explosive teams. It's like, oh no, it's not as visually appealing. We don't get all of these like triple kills in the early game or whatever. They were very reliable. I still expect them to be contending in this split. It's just not always as flashy.
Okay, well, we'll of course track all of those teams in the race for the playoffs. Thank you for voting as well. You voted for G2 en masse, as you usually do. And one champion many of these top teams have used multiple times to success or little less success is Volibear, and Trouble wanted to explain how the bear works.
Absolutely, and I think it's time for the bear to get his highlight finally, because a bunch of the top lane teams, like Shox mentioned as well, like Rogue, like Fnatic, like Misfits as well, and Excel, they really rely on the Volibear to make this early game plays. Now, I want to take you all the way back to spring, where Volibear was everywhere. He was B1, he was the pick to watch, the pick to take, because tower dives were much easier and snowball was much easier to be achieved as well with a more early game meta. Now that we've transitioned to the durability patch, and a lot of the teams were like, well, now that towers do a lot more damage, now that champions are a little bit more tanky, it's not necessarily that easy to dive, therefore, let's go towards the more farming junglers, therefore, like something like an Udyr, like a Lilia. We've even seen Hecarim this split as well. But everyone forgot about the bear for a little while and he came back in. And Excel brought it in first. Makoon coming straight from the EROs, that was his champion. And of course, he has two different paths he can take through the keystones. One of them, as you will be able to see on your screens as well, will be the Predator, and the other one is Press the Attack. Press the Attack makes him the best duelist on the Rift when it comes to junglers, and Predator, of course, allows him to zoomies from lane to lane, grab your flash, then he's gonna take your life second for a repeat gank. But the most important thing is Press the Attack that a lot of these junglers are actually playing onto the Volibear, because he makes all the meta junglers fear the bear when they walk into the river. As you will see, the meta right now is a little bit stale when it comes to the junglers. We have Wukong, Viego, and Xin, and guess what? Volibear does really well into all three. He beats them in the 1v1, and sometimes he even beats them on a 1 versus X. So it's really difficult for these champions to either contest or walk into river without assistance. Now, why Volibear is very, very important for a lot of these teams and why they prioritize him is because he is the easiest champion to bridge a gap if you failed macro early game, if your early game aggression is not going very well, by creating tower dives, creating opportunities, and showing you how also strong he is in a 1 versus X scenario. So I'm gonna bring a few clips up. One is gonna be from Marcoon's XL, and I'm gonna show you that very early tower dive as early as 3 minutes into the game. Level 2 in the bot lane. As you can see, the bot lane from XL want to play very aggressive. They crushed in the wave, really easy, flash in, slap, done. Aggression in the bot lane, you've killed the AD carry, you get ahead, that's how Excel snowball. But this is the true deal right here. Razok onto the Fnatic versus Rogue matchup. This is exactly how they won the entire game, by the Volibear taking the 1 versus 2 versus the Rogue bot lane is what, if you guys remember, snowballed the entire game. So the fact that one champion can do all this in one kit is why he is so prioritized right now and so rated above any other jungler in the league, with a few arguments onto the Wukong right there as well. But tonight we will see if Fnatic falls back to another Volibear game or if they have new tricks up their sleeve as they face off against G2 in our match of the week.
Okay, I'll play Broken Blade and end my turn.
Okay, I'm gonna start with live audience, and I will play Kennen bot lane meta.
Yeah, Yanko, scream your Kennen bot lane meta.
I'm going to start with Yamato Cannon's inspirational speech. That's going to activate Hylissang's Playmaker ability. I get to draw 2 cards and play one of them for free. I'm going to play Whippo's Weird Champion Pool. That allows me to draft any 2 champions. So naturally, I'll draft Garen and Yuumi, activating 2019 Fnatic Fan Trauma. I have to discard a player in order to play 2 additional cards from my hand. The first card I'm going to play is a Reckless Fist Bump pose, and then Upset, whose stats are doubled if there's no Reckless on the field. And finally, my favorite card, Caps 2018. On my next turn, it's GG. You're over, I win.
Okay, yeah. Is it my turn now?
Sure, by all means.
Cool, excellent. I will play totally legit roster acquisition, which means I get to select any one of your players. I'm going to take 2018 Caps.
That's broken!
Yeah, it's pretty strong. Now, 2018 Caps entering the battlefield triggers Mithy's mentorship ability, meaning that I can play an event card from my hand for free. I'm going to play Capital P, which upgrades 2018 Caps into 2022 Caps, who has the special ability Crowd Buff. If there's a 1v1 or a 2v2 in front of a crowd, he wins.
I should not have played live audience.
No, probably not. Now I'm going to play Grabs, whose bad drafts would usually resolve here, but Dylan's good drafts actually cancel them out, leading to an unresolvable draft vortex. Now, when an unresolvable action occurs, I can play whatisgoingon.jpg, search through my library for 2 support cards. Now, I could play Carlos, but we both know he's not that strong. So instead, we both know the card I'm gonna pick.
Shit.
That's correct. It's FLICKR's Duck. That gives me 5 Duck buff cards. I'll select L+ ratio 5 times. Do you think maybe it's time for you to concede?
Wait. I have an answer. I've got a card with so much power that G2 has never once tasted it. A card that only Fnatic can play. I play the Season 1 World Champions.
Trevor, that card's as old as you are. It's neither relevant nor legal. So yeah, L plus ratio. L plus ratio, young buck, you can go to XL. L plus ratio, upset. L plus ratio, SOAS. Maybe a little L plus ratio over here on Broxer, go back to NA. L plus ratio on Hylissang.
I could watch that over and over and over and over
have.
and over again. I have, in fact. Fantastic. And what a great twist on our match of the week video. We got a hype video and we've got this, which actually gets me even more in the mood for G2 versus Fnatic, our match of the week, the last one of the day. Two teams that are currently even in the standings. But going off of our earlier discussion there, at the top of the show, Trouble, I sense that you put G2 a little bit more in the driving seat when it comes to beating Fnatic today.
Yeah, and honestly, I feel like they also have this flair of always managing to bounce back, right? Even in last spring, before playoffs, everyone was like, G2 looks a little bit shaky. Come playoffs, they just literally sweep everyone off the board. And I feel like even though Dylan also said we haven't necessarily found our meta yet, their meta still works. And on a good day, when they're decisive enough in the early game, they can snowball an entire victory so easily.
So Alex, what does Fnatic need to show us today to win?
Well, the answer is quite a lot in some ways, because this is going to be a difficult battle. It always is when you are dealing with teams of this caliber. I think that someone who might be up to the task of that, though, is Wunder. I think that Wunder in the top lane has continually started to impress me. A lot of their play in spring was very good in terms of being left on an island, but still exuding a lot of pressure throughout that. And when we have picks like the Gragas, which has only been picked twice this summer so far, I think that if this starts entering the table as you leave me alone and I become like an unresolvable menace somewhere on the map, that's quite difficult to deal with. The question is, are there other champions that can do that if that's removed?
Yeah, unresolvable draft vortex when it comes to that.
We've got this internal lore thing going on now.
Yeah, for sure. I guess that's definitely the question, right? And they're going to have to show us, because I think they're not going to play easy with either of the drafts and the categories that they plan to ban out. So I don't know if he'll get his hands on his Gragas. But ahead of G2 versus Fnatic, we of course have 4 other matches to kick off the day. I'm looking at Game 3. Yesterday, it was dubbed the gatekeeper or not, right, for Astralis, and Vitality wants that spot, and right now they're sharing it.
Yeah, and absolutely. And if you remember from spring again, Vitality just got into the playoffs, and it didn't necessarily look that prominent the way they did it. And now Astralis, they're getting more wins than they got in spring collectively, and it's only start of the split. Like, it's only 3 weeks in, and they look like if they take Vitality down, this is one of the contenders that wants to take the spot.
And, you know, we have kind of been trying to benchmark them, whereabouts do they sit. Yeah. But for me, that benchmark is firmly in 6th or 5th right now, because they haven't beaten any of the other top teams. Astralis. They haven't actually ended up taking any of those wins against those top table teams. If they're going to start pushing towards being real contenders and rather just sneaking into those playoffs, they need to start taking wins. They're currently 0-3 versus the top ones.
Yeah, I like that context, because it's easy to be like, well, you're doing so much better than spring. Well, that's not very hard.
They are the most improved team. It's just you got to do more.
Yeah,
it's
you got to
crazy.
do more than that if we're going to talk about you as a playoff team. Now, Team BDS, they are looking to bounce back today after a very tough loss to Misfits yesterday, and Lore is catching up with their bot laner Xmati. Take it away.
Thank you, Shox. And Matty, thank you so much for joining me for your very first LEC interview. Actually, I don't think we ever talked outside of LFL. Tell me about the experience so far in the league, and mainly the main differences between when you were experiencing in the LFL and the difficulties in the LEC.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's great to play in the LEC, and it's like really nice to be here and get to experience it. I think obviously the main difference between LFL and LEC is the level. Like, there's a lot better teams in LEC, so it's much harder to kind of play the game that you want to play and kind of get wins on the board. I think also we've like struggled more with this team in terms of like having synergy. Like when I was on previous teams, we had kind of better synergy, so we need to work on that, and that makes it harder to pick up wins as well.
I understand that, but I feel like it's especially through difficulties that you grow more as a player.
Yeah, that's true.
How much do you think you evolved?
I think I've evolved quite a lot this split, on like last split as well. I think I've had a lot of time to kind of see more what my weaknesses are as a player and how I need to change my personality and how I approach stuff towards the like team environment. So yeah, I feel like I've grown a lot despite the rough splits. I feel like I know more what I want to work on, so that's good.
And it mustn't be the easiest, because you had to change support also between spring and summer. Limit is now working with the team, and you have to train Erdote, who's a rookie on the bot lane. How is that going?
I mean, I think it's going pretty well so far. Like, obviously, having to change support is never easy. Like, you like to kind of stay with one person and build synergy. But I feel like Odote, he's a nice guy. Limit was as well, right? Like, I get along with both of them. So it's been good to work with Odote. We still have a lot of room to grow and a lot of room to improve. But I enjoy playing with him. And I feel like as a team, we enjoy playing with each other. We just need to kind of fix our consistency issues and, like, really make sure we're playing to our maximum every game. And then I think we can be a lot better than we are now.
Consistency and synergy, I think, go in pairs. So in no time, you guys should play better to your level you're expecting, of course. But interestingly enough, BDS, even though the results may not be satisfying, you had really good games against G2, really good games against Fnatic. What is missing for the team, you would say?
I mean, I think the G2 game and the Fnatic game, I think we really played like we were able to play. I feel like our main issue is like we're not getting as much good practice in as we would like. So I know that as a team we can play to a good level, but when we have like a bad week of practice, it's hard to really say like we're going to go up on stage and play really good, right? I think if we're able to kind of make practice more consistent and like make our level kind of higher on average, then I think we'll have more good games. But until then, it's like some games will be good, some will be bad until we kind of raise that level.
Practice is something I often hear when it comes to BDS. But last topic, you'll be facing Excel today. Mickey, Patrick, botlane, one of the best I think we have in the league. How would you describe them?
I think they're both good players. I think they like to play aggressive on lane. They like to kind of look for advantages. So I'm expecting them. I mean, obviously there's some new champions in the meta right now, like Seraphine. We don't know exactly what they're going to prioritize, but I'm expecting them to look to punishes and look to play aggressive. So we just need to do our best to answer that and play our game. And then hopefully we can have a good game.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on that. Thank you so much, Maddie, for the interview. Good luck against Excel. Shox, back to you.
Thank you very much, Laure. A very realistic perspective from Maddie saying, well, yeah, there are just a couple of things that we need to work on. And I believe you know him quite well, don't you?
Well, yeah. So we were actually both watched the World Finals at the same watch party somewhere in London last year. So I had a chance to chat to him back then. This is obviously before he came into the LEC. But I was really struck by his intelligence about different matchups and actually just his mindset. It's obviously been a very difficult season so far across the entire year. But I think just, again, showing the level-headedness and the awareness of what needs to be changed, it speaks a lot to his character and hopefully what he can continue to bring to this team.
Oh, absolutely does. We just see that he's trying to take it all in, which is great for a younger player. Now, let's also talk about their opponents, Excel. It is going to be a difficult one for BDS, even though Excel yesterday wasn't able to beat Rogue. They have been phenomenal so far. So a little challenge. You can talk to me about what's been working for Excel, but you cannot mention that guy in the jungle, Marcoon, because he gets mentioned too much.
How you feeling over that trouble?
You know what? I'm not actually. I'm gonna be very nice and say that I feel, in particular against this matchup, when Excel is playing the top 6 teams that we have in the ladder stage of yesterday.
Can we bring him back now, please?
Bring him back.
When a top team is playing against the other top teams, it's fine if you slip up and lose to them. You were like, oh, they were better on the day, but we know we can be on the same page. But when you're playing against a team like BDS, who are at the very bottom of the standings, you slip up against them, then other teams will overtake you on the top of the standings.
Well, when it comes to kind of the teams that are at the top of the table, they did not manage to beat Rogue, but they did manage to beat Mad recently. We want to pull up the draft. So is this kind of the recipe for success for Excel?
So I think what really showed in this kind of game, I mean, I'll let you talk about the draft in a little bit, but in terms of like, it's just every person on this team is just on the same page. They understand where the play is going to be made next. So even in top lane, if the play's being made bot lane, it's like, oh, okay, this is what needs to happen with my lane. It's just an overall understanding, everyone working towards a greater goal.
But if you look all across the board, I see proactivity in every lane. I think if I'm not wrong, that's even the clip that I pulled up on the Volibear play. You've got the Lucian Yuumi in the bot lane, so you want to play aggressive through there. You've got the Ari wants to play aggressive. You've got the Na, you can make plays when he's Mega Na. So they literally had a 3-lane setup and an uber aggressive jungler that can make plays work in the early game.
So many options.
And this is exactly, they have so many options. They can play through every player in the game. And this is what unlocks their mid-game macro, getting ahead in the early.
Sometimes the mid-game macro has not been exactly where it needed to be. And I think in the hardest of situations, sometimes in terms of the opponents that they face, be it a G2, be it a Rogue, but they know that they have a Rock in the bot lane, Patrick, and he's been a Rock there for so long.
Yeah, and, you know, I think it is right to just put a pin in a couple of those mid-game worries to say, we'll return to this if this happens again. But when you do have someone who has been, particularly through Spring, you know, the Aphelios, Jinx, crazy hyper carry, still starting to show up on the different AD carry champion pool of Summer, this has been a big point for Excel, and particularly with Patrick at this point, also be able to bring that to the early game. Of course, Trouble was mentioning that Lucian Yumi, which you do want to start making plays with early, making dives, roaming across the map, as you can see in this clip too, is starting to show the holistic understanding of how this player wants to play the game.
And Trouble, I know we always forget to mention him, but you just want to give a quick word of how good Nukeduck has been doing.
I think his stylistic completely changed from spring to summer. In spring, he used to sit in the lane, even though we had more playmaker champions
Don't mention Sona.
up and available in the pool. He would sit a lot in the lane. Now he's pairing up with Markoon so freaking much, not just for the mid-jungle duo, but to roam around every single lane. And I feel like the Ari and the Lissandra have been huge key factors in unlocking him on the side lanes.
And having a huge impact for XL. And without further ado, it's Medi-Vedi time for XL versus BDS. Over to you.